Yes, I just switched on the recording. It's exactly 7:30 now. I think, do you all agree? Is it, oh, someone said something, yes, can hear you, but was, oh yeah. And does everybody agree? Is it okay to live stream via my Facebook website? Is that okay for you, Sefi?
Of course.
Yes? Okay, then I will see if I can switch it on. So now it's preparing to live stream the webinar. Yes, and now we are live streaming also our webinar on my Facebook site. And let me return to you. Yes, here we are again. And well, this is an initiative of the peace organization Peace SOS. And we would like to see a world in which all children can play. This is our aim. And therefore, we think that we adults should live in harmony and protect the most vulnerable ones amongst us. And actually, we think that we are very much also involved in what's happening in Israel and Palestine. I have been there, I've been to Israel and I've visited the West Bank in 2017. And Loris Cornelissen is our co-host today. He's also from Peace SOS. And he has also been there. And our vision of peace, this also fits with a recent book of Severin Autisser. And we think that local people should be put in the driver's seats, that they are the ones, they live in the area of conflict, they know the situation, they know the culture, they know the language, they know what's happening. So we believe that the local people also have the solutions. And therefore we host several webinars. And for our first webinar, we have Sefi Donner speaking for us. And he's the chairman of Sipur-Hikaya. And he comes from Haifa, from Israel. And he will share with us this evening about the recent developments which happened, which were in the news and which we are very worried about. I also got a lot of friends from Gaza, and they also told me they are in a very, very hard and difficult situation, and I really feel sorry for them, and also with the people from Israel, of course, who are hurt, but I feel sorry for all the people who were hurt in this conflict. So can you tell us something about the most recent developments, Sefi, and can you tell us, please, and share with you your thoughts about your initiative of Sipur-Hikaya, please. We are very honored that you come to speak for us.
It is my honor, and I'm very happy to join, and thank you so much, Mei. So, good evening, everybody. Very happy to be here. I will speak for 2-3 minutes about the situation nowadays in Israel-Palestine, and then we will move to discuss and to describe to you, to introduce to you Sipur-Hikaya. So let's start a little bit with the situation. We had a confrontation about 12 days between Israel and Palestine, missiles from both sides to the other side, and some Israelis were killed, quite a few people in Gaza as well. There is always a problem, the Gaza, the way Gaza is designed, and the way the Hamas people are operating. They are operating from areas where civilians live. So many times when the Israeli army shoots at Hamas, they also shoot at civilians, and it's a big shame. We should try and avoid it as much as possible. And I'm really sorry for every loss of the civilians in Gaza. And if we have some people from Gaza here, we have all the empathy to the people, to the civilians. We would love to have peaceful relations with our neighbors in Gaza. And I do hope that we will be able to reach a solution that will enable both people on both sides to live peacefully and hopefully prosper, because in Gaza there is a lot of poverty, a lot of economical issues. There is a lot to do, and let's hope that the Hamas and the Palestinian Authority and European nations will be able to do the right things in order to change the atmosphere and to create better lives for the people in Gaza. So all the best. And what can I say? I want to share with you people that we are a bit afraid. On Thursday, the right-wing extremists are planning again to hold a parade in East Jerusalem. And this might cause some problems. And I really hope that on Thursday, we won't find ourselves with some new issues and new problems with Gaza and with Hamas. A lot of people are worried about this development. Some people believe that Netanyahu is trying to lit the fire again in order to prevent the situation where a new government is formed. The plan right now is that next Monday, the parliament will vote for a new government with a new prime minister. So perhaps some problems in East Jerusalem in Thursday might cause problems, and then the government will not come to the parliament, will not be voted. So maybe this is something in his mind. I don't want to decide. I don't want to give to be 100% sure about it, but some people suspect that maybe this is what's behind the decision to hold this parade. So I hope that this parade will not go out, will not start, will not walk. Let's hope that they won't do it. So let's move forward, or let's move aside, speak about something else, perhaps a bit more optimistic, and that's the NGO that I established some time ago, Sipur-Hikaya. Sipur means story in Hebrew. Hikaya means story in Arabic. Two stories, two narratives. And that's the story of this, or that's the essence of this NGO, the idea that we want to promote the learning of the other side's narrative. We would love Israelis to study the Palestinian narrative, and we want the Palestinians to study the Israeli narrative. That's the basics. So let me a little bit introduce myself and the story of how it was established. So I'm a businessman. I've been doing business all my life. And 15 years ago, I established a company selling sports tickets in the internet called Sports Events 365. And we established websites in 22 languages, including, of course, English, Hebrew, but also Arabic and many other languages. And the Arabic website is where I met so many Arabs, customers, also employees. And at a certain moment, I said to myself, okay, I should be also aware of my business, find some time, devote some time to try and bring peace with the Palestinians. And the next step was that I said to myself, okay, what's the way I should go? And I said to myself that one of our problems in this region is lack of information, meaning that many Israelis, they don't know what's in the head of the Palestinians, what is their narrative, what do they have in mind, why are they so against us, why do they hate us, why do they want us to be out of this region? And on the other hand, the Palestinians, they don't know too much about the Israeli narrative. They don't know why we came here. They don't know what's the story, why the Israelis are here, why can't they go back to the countries where they came from, where they immigrated to from Israel. So with this in mind, I started looking for for some information or for some organizations to join. And the next step was that I was exposed to a book that presents the two narratives side by side. Let me bring it to the camera. So this is the book. It is called, this is the Hebrew version, to study the narrative, the historian narrative of the other. And it describes here in Hebrew the two narratives side by side. So you see here, one color is the Israeli Zionist narrative, and the other side in green is the Palestinian narrative, 250 pages divided into two. So what's the story of this book? I contacted the professor that was in charge of the history books, and we met, and he explained to me, this is an initiative that started in the late 90s, like 23 years ago. It was a little bit after the Oslo Agreement was signed, and the idea behind it was that if we want the peace, Israeli-Palestinian peace, to be stabilized and efficient and successful, we should change the history books in high schools. So we should change the situation where usually when two enemies are in a situation of battle, the history books, the way you teach history is that you demonize the other side. So in Israel, you demonize the Palestinians. They are bad, they are evil, they are doing the wrong things. We are the good ones, they are the bad ones. And the same in the Palestinian side. So it was an initiative by psychologists, both one Israeli, one Palestinian, and they said, okay, we need to write a history book that will be more neutral. And they brought a history teacher, history professor, two professors from each side, and each one brought history teachers. And for a period of about 9 years, they wrote this book describing the Israeli narrative and the Palestinian narrative, starting from the beginning of Zionism and further on until the year 2000. When they finished writing the book, the idea was to present more moderate narratives, because you can have more than one narrative, more than one Israeli narrative. The Israeli narrative of the left wing and the right wing and the religious people is not the same, and the same with Palestinians. You have more than one narrative. The idea was to have narratives which are relatively moderate, not too far from each other. However, when they finished writing the book, and it was published, of course, both in Hebrew and Arabic, also in English and later on in German. So when they finished, they offered it to the Ministry of Education in both countries or territories, and they were thrown out, kicked out from the stairs, just down the stairs, and they were told, forget it. So when I met the historian, Professor Eyal Naveh, he said, listen, we are not doing too much since the book was not authorized as a textbook for high school. Here and there, we teach it in some organizations they bring us, but we are not doing too much. We are silent. So I said, listen, this book is something very promising. I read it and I came back to him and said, I would love to promote this book, not just the book, but the concept of dual narrative. So he said, fine, go ahead. And the next step was to establish an NGO. We were hoping to do something with the Palestinians, but the entrepreneur behind the Palestinian side was a bit afraid from the BDS. So we said, okay, let's establish an NGO in Israel, not the NGO that published the book, a new NGO, and that's Sipur-Hikaya. I'm the chairman, the history professor, he is the president, and the history teachers that wrote the book, they are members of this NGO. So we established it, and less than a year ago, I was in a position to move forward, move ahead, and to start, advertising it, creating a website, creating a Facebook page, and we started moving forward and to try and start making the change. This is a long process. We don't believe in something short. Our vision is that many Israelis, not just high school pupils, also adults, will study the dual narrative, the dual narrative model, mainly to study the narrative of the other side. And we are starting with the Israeli side. At the second step, once we have more resources, right now we don't have resources. At the second step, we hope that the Palestinians will go through a similar process. And once there is a long list, thousands, tens of thousands of Israelis and Palestinians that are aware that there is a different story, you know, that's a basic for every process. When two people have a fight and they have a debate and they want to try and reach a compromise, the best step is that each one tries to understand what's in the head of the other side. The same applies to nations. So we hope that tens of thousands of Israelis and tens of thousands of Palestinians will start demonstrating, will start contacting and encouraging the leaders to move forward to a peace agreement, to a reconciliation. And reconciliation is important because we can't, a peace agreement like exists between Israel and Egypt or Israel and Jordan is not sufficient in that case. We should look for a more, a stronger peace, a warm peace with much better relations, because the populations are really together. Just imagine, we have holy places, Jerusalem, Hebron, Bethlehem. We have issues of air pollution, water. We have the populations. We have settlements and settlers, and we have East Jerusalem, where you have some Israeli neighborhoods with tens of thousands, and we have Arabs, just neighbors of each other. It's very difficult to separate and create borders between those nations. So we should do our best to build a situation where good relations and living in peaceful and reconciliation. And for reconciliation, you need to go through a process where people are exposed to the other side narrative so they understand better what's in his mind. You don't need necessarily to agree with this narrative, but please, we should try to listen. And let me give you some examples about the differences between the narratives. So for example, how did everything start? So according to this Zionism, so it started when the Jews from East Europe came in 1882, 1883. That's where the first Jews started immigrating to Israel. There were some Jews, very few Jews here at the time, but at that time, immigration started of Jews to Israel because they, for many years, they were hoping to come one day back to Jerusalem, but at that time, they were worried about some anti-Semitism in East Europe and other problems, and they decided that that is the time to go back and to try and build a state in Israel. So that's where they started. It was their initiative. But if you read the Palestinian narrative in this green book, you will realize that according to the Palestinians, that's not how it started. They believe that in 1800, when Napoleon tried to conquer Israel and he had difficulties to conquer Acre, he contacted the Jews living in Israel and told them, hey guys, please help me conquer Acre, which is a city just north of Haifa. Please help me conquer this city. And in return, I will build for you your holy temple in Jerusalem. So that's how it started. And the next thing is, according to the Palestinian narrative, that the foreign affairs minister of the UK, of Britain in 1859, Palmerston, he started thinking and he wrote a manifest about it, saying that we should try to have in this area that is full of Arabs, Muslims, we should have also a non-Arab state, so it will give us better access to the oil in Iraq and the Gulf countries. So we should have a country for the Jews in this part of the Mediterranean Sea, in the east part of the Mediterranean Sea. So it was like the initiative, a colonialist idea of Britain and later on France, they wanted to have a non-Muslim state in this area so they have better access to the oil, etc., etc. So according to the Palestinians, we are a colonialist vision. We are a result of a colonialist vision, and we believe that it's Zionism. It's the idea that Jews, all through history, they were always thinking about, we want to be one day back in Jerusalem. So that's one example. And when I wanted to see another example of the differences and to give you an explanation, for example, the first case where we had a big war, a big fight between Jews and Arabs here in Israel was not in 48, it was in 1921. In 1921, we had riots, we had approximately 50 Jews that were killed and 50 Arabs that were killed. What happened? According to the Jews, it started by the Arabs. There was a parade of some Jews for May 1st, socialist Jews made a parade in Tel Aviv. They went into Jaffa, and Arabs started shooting at them and with knives, etc., etc. Tough time. And the Arabs were the ones who started the violence. And according to the Arabs, there was a parade, but some of the Jews started shooting with gunfire, and the Arabs were afraid, and this is why they started shooting and started killing. So the Arabs believe the Jews started, the Jews believe the Arabs started. So this book is, this book, I showed you already, is full of such examples where people remember the history differently. I could give you many more examples, but our time is a bit short, so I gave you just those two. So a little bit about our NGO. We are about 15 volunteers in the NGO. We hold Zoom meetings where we bring together people right now from Israel, most of them Jews, but some of them are Arabs, to speak peace. When I say speak peace, I mean we hold meetings where we bring sometimes people from the academy or others to discuss. For example, we brought one educational or psychologist who is dealing with political psychologists, and he explained about what's going on in countries at war, about the education system, etc., and how things can change. So that was one lecture. Then we brought a lecturer who described how they achieved peace in Ireland and South Africa, how difficult it is, how they succeeded, etc. So to give people the feeling that it's possible to achieve peace, even in locations where for tens or hundreds of years you could not achieve peace. And then we brought Palestinians. We brought Palestinians, Hebrew speakers. It's the interaction committee of the Palestinian Authority. They came and spoke. We had about 200 Israelis listening to their narrative. The Palestinians described their narrative about what happened, and also they spoke about the future, how they believe that we can reach an agreement here, what are the bases of it, and separating to two states, etc. And they came with their vision, and the idea was there is a partner. So one of the important things that we want to promote among Israelis is that there is a partner, meaning that, a lot of Israelis, they say, yeah, I would love to compromise for peace, etc., but there is no partner for peace. So we are trying to show on those meetings that there is a partner, and we also expose other peace organizations with their ideas, etc. And in addition to that, we are trying to raise money, to raise funds. And once we raise funds, we can do more than those Zoom meetings. We have a few ideas. For example, we want to do peace with the help of celebrities. We want to bring some celebrities like football players and football coaches and singers and other celebrities to study perhaps for 1 hour a little bit about the dual narrative, about this narrative and that narrative. And at the end, we want them to go out and shout and tell all their followers, hey, time for you to study the two narratives model. And we hope that each one of those, let's say 50 people, will bring 100 people, 200 people, and then we are with perhaps 1,000 people or more, or perhaps 3,000 people that will go and study the dual narrative perhaps for 6 hours, not just 1 hour. You know, the celeb, 1 hour is enough. He's a busy person, but hopefully he can convince people to study for 6 hours. And after 6 hours, we hope that we will find some hundreds of people that will become our ambassadors. So that's one thing that we have in mind, and we're trying to raise funds to achieve this concept and this way how to move forward with the exposing the dual narrative. Then we want to work with teachers. We have some ideas how to educate teachers right now, because the book is prohibited, but we still want some teachers to go and teach. Let's say Israeli teachers, when they teach the Israeli Zionism, the history of the Zionism, we want them once in a while teaching the Israeli Zionism, the Israeli history, to come and show, okay, now take a look how the Palestinians, what is their perspective. So we want to educate them, we want to bring them to some seminars, and hopefully then to convince them to give some, 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, while teaching the history of the Zionism, again, first in the Israeli side. And then a third thing that we have in mind is in the 10th grade in Israel, there are some 2 hours for general education. So our idea is that in general education, you can teach the youngsters at the age of 15, 16, you can teach them everything. And the decision is not made by the Ministry of Education, it is made by the teachers and the principals. So we want to prepare for them, not the book. The book is prohibited. We don't want to put them in a sensitive situation, but we want to teach them about peace agreements in the world, about conflict resolution. So we want children at the age of 15, 16 to start learning about how you solve conflicts, how it was solved in Ireland, in South Africa, etc. And then, later on at the end of the season also, what we can study about that, how we can do something similar in Israel, in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So we want them to try and understand that it's not impossible, because what we have in mind, what we see, that most Israelis don't believe that there is a chance to peace. It is not an issue anymore. People think there is no chance for peace. So they don't speak, it's not in the media, nothing like that. So this is in a nutshell, the story of Sipur-Hikaya, and I'm happy to answer questions, I'm happy to listen to comments, etc., etc.
Well, Sefi, thank you very much. It was very brave for you to do, also because you say the book is prohibited. So I think you really have a warm heart for peace. And I really enjoyed listening to your story and the 2 examples you gave. And I also believe that reconciliation and warm peace is very important. And there is also a Facebook group, Israelis and Palestinians for Peace. And I also noticed that people say, what do we share together? And someone said, and they also said it when I attended public peace negotiations talks, they also said, we both enjoy hummus, let's eat hummus together. And I really thought that was a wonderful example. But like you said, we invite everyone to ask questions. You can put them in the comments. I think that may be the easiest. And actually, Laura will be the moderator, but we have, let's see if people have questions for you. I can also look at my Facebook page. If you, then I switch screens. Loris, if you can take an eye at the comments.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I do have a short question, possibly, if it's no problem. Do you have one, maybe like recent example from the book? Because it sounds very interesting to me. Like, do you have a recent example of where, yeah, just maybe a short one of another differences in narratives in that's from the book?
Yeah. So also 29, the riots in 29, it's also similar. The Arabs were feeling frightened and worried, and the Jews believe that everything started in cities like Hebron, and it was an Arab initiative. Or about 47 and 48, of course, it's you know, the independence war or the Nakba, everything there, of course, totally two different narratives. And recently I heard, I didn't find it in the book, but I spoke with one Palestinian, and he said that the resolution of the UN, you know, the UN passed a resolution in November 29, 47, splitting the state of Israel or the Palestine area into two states, the Israeli state and the Arab state. So one day after, in a war, in a way, I can say that one day after the independence war started. And from my point of view, the history that I learned is that the Palestinians, the Arabs, were not willing to accept a Jewish state. They did not accept that we have a Jewish state. But recently, I heard one Arab tour guide discussing something about the Galilee, etc. And he mentioned that one of the problems, or one of the big problems of the UN resolution in 1947 was that they split the state of Israel in a way that they gave 56% of the territory to the Jews and 44% to the Palestinians, although at that time the Palestinians were about 65% of the population and the Jews were less than 40%. So the Arabs were unhappy because it was an unfair split, dividing of the state. I really didn't learn it. For me, it's clear that they were not willing to accept us they were not willing to accept that the Jews will be here because we are in a place that belongs to the Muslims, the part of every place where Muhammad stood has to be part of the Arab Khalifa, and so they were not willing to give us a smaller area. They believed that we should be citizens of an Arab state. So that's what I learned when I learned history, but that's what he said recently to me in a discussion. So, you know, everyone has his history, and then the idea is that you teach this history to the youngsters, and the youngsters now are, for example, nowadays many times the Arabs are afraid that the Jews will destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque, will destroy it. Al-Aqsa is in danger, and when Al-Aqsa is in danger, people leave everything and they go to demonstrate in East Jerusalem, and because the leaders say Al-Aqsa is in danger. So that's part of what's going on here. Here and there, we have cases where the flames are coming back and back, and the war starts again, and fighting and shooting and missiles, because everyone has his story, his version about the reality, and we are still there. We need to change the direction of the wheel. That's the idea of Sipur-Hikaya. To say, okay, let's change it. Of course, we're not the only peace organization. Other peace organizations, they take other steps, they have other measurements, they move forward in other directions, but similarly, they all want to change the atmosphere, to change the direction of the wheel. Instead of making things worse and worse, let's try and do things better. Of course, we need all the moderate people to be together, moderate people from both sides to be united against the extremists, because the extremists are usually the ones who are dominant in both states.
Yes, thank you very much, Sefi. Loris, I hope it's okay if I ask it, because I just noticed there were also two questions for you, Sefi. One is from Ben Gorrison. He asked, he's interested in the English version of the dual narrative book, and he asks where he can purchase it.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat. I may have made a mistake, one letter, but it's side-by-side parallel histories on Amazon. So you go in Amazon and you look for a book, side-by-side parallel histories of Israel and Palestine or something like that. If you give me a minute, I'll bring you the link, just 1 second. Less than a minute and I'll be with you. Okay, here we are. Okay, so that's the link, even easier.
Great. I also see, I don't know if you also see it, Sefi, there's also a question of Bernard Elliott. He asks, do you think the new American administration will sincerely help to bring peace between the two sides?
Okay, so definitely with the new establishment in the US with Biden and his people, there are better chances for peace because they are much better and decent brokers. They are friends of Israel, but they are also friends of Palestine, and they are trying to be much more neutral. So the Palestinians can trust them. Unlike the Trump administration, where the Palestinians felt really frustrated and they felt really bad about what's going on. Of course, the decision to move the embassy to Jerusalem and a few more decisions. So the Palestinians decided that as long as Trump is in power, they don't want to do anything. Now, where Biden is in power, there is definitely a chance that the Americans will play an active role. But you know, first of all, we need to have a stable government in Israel, which is the first condition. As long as we had, for 2.5 years, for 2 years plus, we didn't have a normal government. Hopefully now, if they manage to establish and to create and to get the approval of the parliament for this government, we have a new government, not the ideal one, but definitely something worth it to try. And then let's see, because Netanyahu definitely did not want to move forward with the Palestinians, and he was happy that the Hamas is in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority is only in the West Bank. And this is, of course, not a good situation to build peace. But if at a certain moment the Palestinian Authority will also have control over Gaza, it's definitely a good start. And yeah, we have a work to do. It's not, it won't be easy to achieve peace. And that's when we do our work at Sipur-Hikaya, we are looking for the long term. We want first to do education. From my point of view, it will be very difficult to achieve peace tomorrow morning. So if we want to achieve peace, we need to start working on this now, teaching the youth, teaching the adults, bringing to their knowledge the narratives of each side, and then hopefully the atmosphere will be such that the leaders will be more comfortable to go and look for some compromise. Right now, there is no pressure to compromise by the people, not the Palestinians, not the Israelis. Mm-hmm. So the Americans by themselves, they can try, but probably they won't have enough power to apply pressure on both sides.
Okay. Well, if I may ask, if people are still invited to ask questions. And meanwhile, I will ask also, Sefi, what do you think of the children's perspective? Because I noticed that also on the Israeli and Palestinians want peace, I noticed that children were drawing people on a bridge and giving hands. And I thought, oh, this is so lovely. Children really want peace, and they don't have all these difficult concepts that adults have. What do you think of this?
So I would say that children are a very important segment, and I would love to see that the educational system in both states put energy and time and money and resources to educate the children, to move, to think of peace, to speak peace, to draw peace, etc. But even more important, of course, it's important to start the education at, at the age of 4, perhaps. But even more important is to speak with the high school guys, the 14, the 15, the 16 years old, to start speaking with them, to educate them. It's not, if we do it, it doesn't mean that they won't go to the army, as some people say to us. We spoke, my colleagues, the teachers, spoke with one of the head managers in the Ministry of Education, and he said, listen, once we have peace, I will be happy that the Israeli high school students will study the Palestinian narrative. But right now, we need them to be fully motivated to go to the army, to go to the best units, to sign, to be officers, etc. So he's afraid that if they will study the other side's narrative, they will not be motivated to go to the army. But we have research saying that it did not affect their motivation. We had a few cases where some studies were made by some academics showed that even though those high school youngsters studied the other narrative, it did not affect their beliefs and their feeling or identity as Jews, as Israelis, as Zionists. So the risk is not that much, and we should, the prize is so big, so we should make the effort and teach the youngsters. So I believe in teaching the children, the younger children, and especially the high school guys. It's very important to convince them and to make them our ambassadors. And they can speak to parents, they can demonstrate, they have more time, etc.
And I think maybe we can also learn as adults from the children. Maybe we can learn to them, but I think they also give us food for thought, maybe. Sometimes I think maybe children are in some cases wiser maybe than adults.
They can push us, they can definitely, they can encourage us to move forward, they can go and demonstrate, they have the power, they have the energy, they can do it.
Okay, well, I don't think there are any questions anymore, but thank you very much for telling us about your story and your efforts for peace. We wish you and all the people, the Israelis and the Palestinians working with you, a lot of success. And of course, we all hope that peace is coming soon for the people in Israel and Palestine. And if we can contribute to it, we are here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, May. I wish you good luck with all your initiatives. It was a pleasure to be with you and with your members, and I hope for your success and with your ideas and initiatives. I go through your Facebook page and read your initiatives and your thoughts. So good luck to Peace SOS, and good luck to all the peace fighters, and let's hope for the best.
Yes, for a world in which all children can play.
A world.
Okay. Have a good evening. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.